Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. So with everything that's going on right now, especially obviously in Europe between Russia and Ukraine, NATO and us, but there's more obviously. There's China, Taiwan, North Korea shooting missiles off yesterday. A lot of stuff going on. And so let's talk real briefly about what we need to be doing right now to kind of get prepared for it. I mean, most of you, I assume, because you've been watching this channel for a while, you've been getting prepared for a while now. At the very least, you've been getting prepared for the last year or two because of all the health crisis stuff going on. And then now we've kind of shifted away from that, at least for the moment, and moved into this global conflict, World War III kind of scenario. So there's some things that we can do kind of now to kind of buffer that. You know, preparations doesn't mean that you're not going to feel anything. It doesn't mean that it's not going to hurt or that it's not going to be tough to kind of survive. Preparing is just is kind of a buffer. It softens the blow. It gives you an advantage over those that have done nothing. And so we want to talk about that today. I'm not going to get into kind of the politics or the news of what's going on. I'll make a video later today covering all that. Let's just talk about what we can do right now to start getting ready. So with everything that's going on in Europe, a lot of the things that's going to affect us here in the United States in the immediate is going to be supplies. It's going to be cost of goods. And it's very possibly going to be affecting our currency. Those are probably the main three things right now that we have to face with what's going on. Now, there's other things that could transpire and exacerbate later on down the road in the coming weeks or months. But right now, those are probably the three things we need to focus on. Go ahead and continue doing your normal preps, okay? Keep focusing on those. And put a lot of emphasis on food because, number one, you got to have that to live, okay? But number two, we're already dealing with high prices. We're dealing with inflated currency. We're dealing with supply chain issues. And then, like I've said in the last few days, all this stuff that's going on between Russia and Ukraine is just going to make it worse. Russia is one of the largest suppliers on the planet of fertilizer. And they've already cut that off. They're not exporting any fertilizer. So that's just going to cause shortages and price increases in food. Russia's one of the biggest exporters on the planet of wheat. Well, as you all know, wheat's in everything just about. And so it's going to cause prices of wheat to go up. Anything that has to do with wheat. And then Ukraine themselves, they're one of the biggest producers of wheat on the planet. And they're also one of the biggest producers of corn. And they are the biggest producer of sunflower seed and sunflower oils. So there's a lot of food-related items right there. And wheat and corn are two of your number one ingredients in a vast majority of foods out there. So it's just kind of logical, right? If there's war going on, if there's, exports being shut down in two places that account for a very large percentage, wheat is around 30% between the two countries. They are about 30% of the world's wheat exports. And then corn, again, they're a major producer of corn. And then, like I said, about 80%, I believe, the last time I checked, of sunflower comes from Ukraine. So food, folks, stock up on foods. I would, flour doesn't have an extremely long shelf life. There are ways that you can take flour and extend the shelf life, but if you just have it in a bucket or something, after about 6 months, it's going to start, going rancid. It's not going to be very good. You can freeze it. You can dry can it. But flour doesn't have a real long shelf life. Another alternative, which is something I've always pushed, is to buy wheat in the whole berries, the whole grain, okay? Now that has a very long shelf life, especially if you store it properly. If you take wheat and you put it in vacuum sealed containers and buckets, that's how we do it here, your wheat's going to last 20 to 40 years, a very long time. Now, of course, you got to grind it, so you're going to have a grinder. This is something that we do here at the homestead. The vast majority of the flour that we use, we grind it ourselves. And it's always good to have a grinder that can be used electrically or manually, or have one of each, because that wheat is not going to do you any good if your grinder only works when there's electricity, and then that fails. So have alternatives, backups, contingencies to all that. So I would focus on that. Another thing to focus on, and I talked about this yesterday on my Patreon channel, is your animal feeds. For those of you that are homesteaders, farmers, and you have livestock or farm animals, you already know that in the last year or so, last 2 years, the price of animal feed has gone up. I've seen our prices go up anywhere between 30 and 40%, and that's pretty significant. I would expect those to continue to go up. So stock up if you can. Some places you can buy in bulk. There's ways to make it last long. You know, what we use here is the big 55-gallon plastic food grade drums that have a sealable, removable top, and we fill those up with animal feed, and that's our long term. I mean, I know some farms have big grain silos or larger grain bins. We don't have that here, but there are a lot of alternatives to doing that. So I would really put a lot of focus, because those farm animals aren't going to do you any good if you can't feed them. They're not going to be producing food or whatever it is, milk or whatever it is that you've got them for, if you can't feed them. So make sure you stock up on enough food, and if you haven't already, certainly start working out alternative plans to feed your farm animals. You know, what are some other ways, if the supply chains get shut down, what are other ways that you can feed your farm animals? So start thinking about that. Now, the other things to think about when preparing for all this is your money. Finance is money. With all the sanctions that's being put on Russia, and especially with the announcement that they're kicking Russia, or at least part, they're not doing it all, but they're kicking part of Russia off the SWIFT money transaction system, which is to put it very simply, it's an international global system of how banks send money from each other. Okay, it's interesting. I won't go into this because that'll be for the next video. How there's already been talk over the last couple of years of eliminating that system because it takes too long, of moving to something new. You know, there's talk of Ripple or other platforms of using it. But the point is that they're removing Russia, or part of Russia, from that system. So that means that, you know, a lot of the goods that would be exported from Russia are no longer going to be, because they can't get the money for it. You know, if you have a business and you buy something that's imported in from Russia, they're not going to sell it to you because you can't. There's no way for you to send them money. That's how the system works. That's how money gets transacted. You know, if you buy something from Russia, it's got to go through a system to get there, and to transfer that money from U.S. dollars to rubles and all that kind of stuff. And if they're getting kicked off of that, that's more stuff that's not coming. Now, we don't get a ton of other things from Russia, but we do about $30 billion in trade, and the vast majority of that's oil, but and gas and things like that. But there are other things that we get, and it's not just vodka. Okay, so what's could happen, and a lot of people fear this, and this is what we're told. The reason why there was hesitancy to remove Russia from that is because it could kind of backfire. And the SWIFT system is really strongly based on the U.S. dollar, and the fear is that it could help or cause the dollar to devalue quicker. So if that happens, crashing economy, crashing currency, which I think is all part of their plan, that's going to affect us our personal money, our personal economics. Also with all the cyber attacks that they're threatened. And then on top of the cyber attacks, the stuff that we saw happen in Canada, where they were freezing people's bank accounts, I don't really think right now is a good time to be keeping a lot of liquidity, a lot of cash in the bank. Okay, I mean, I'm not a financial advisor, so you do what you will with your money, but I know for me personally, I'm only going to be keeping enough money just to pay the bills that I need to pay through that bank account. I wouldn't keep a whole lot, because I just don't think banks are very secure. I know another YouTube channel, Pinball Preparedness, was saying that around his local area, there were some reports of very long lines at the bank, and people, withdrawing a lot of their money. I haven't seen or heard of any reports like that in my area, but that doesn't mean that it's not happening in certain little pockets around the country. And as things get worse, it could happen more. Now, when the invasion happened in Ukraine, we saw the stock market overnight just boom, dropped. It's come up. and it's actually gone up quite a bit. But the prediction is starting this week, with all these new sanctions and with things seeming to heat up more over there, we could see a lot of volatility and markets going down. So if you have money there, be aware of that. Another thing to think about, when they invaded Ukraine overnight, we saw gold and silver skyrocket. Now they've come back down to kind of what was normal before then. But I think what that shows is, folks, is the power of gold and silver, that when things get really bad, gold and silver is going to reign king way over stock market and dollar and even Bitcoin, I believe, because that night that they invaded, Bitcoin dropped like $4,500 overnight, and it has come back up some. But the only thing that really went up great and strong was gold and silver. And like I said, they've come back down to kind of a somewhat normal level. So it might be a good time to look at gold and silver again, and to put a little money that way. Another thing, bullets. As this heats up, there's going to be more and more people to begin to panic buy. And I've already been hearing of that. I've heard over the weekend a few people, between commenting online and emailing me saying that the ammo supplies in their local stores are drying up real quick. And it was just at that point, we were just getting to that point that ammunition prices had gone down, not quite to normal, but we're getting really, really close to normal. And the supplies of a lot of your major calibers were just about up to where most people would like it, where you could go in and if you had the money, you could buy what you want of it, instead of just trying to get, the last one or two boxes. So I also think would probably mean that the overall supply chain of ammunition is probably not strong yet. It was getting there, but it's not there yet. And so with this happening, I suspect we're going to see a lot of ammunition being bought up, guns, things like that. People panic. They see what's happening in Russia. They see what Putin is doing. They hear rumors of China and Taiwan and things like that, and they automatically think, okay, it's Red Dawn, let's go get geared up. So, make sure you're stocked up. And people ask all the time how much ammo I should have. As much as you can afford, okay? I mean, I wouldn't only buy that and neglect purchasing food and other things, but I don't think that you can ever get to a point of like, oh man, I have too much. I shouldn't have bought that last box of ammunition. So those are some other things. Now, fuel prices will probably go up. We're already seeing pockets around the country, from the reports that I've seen, fuel prices over the weekend jumping anywhere from 20 to 40 cents, with rumors that they will go up. Now, this is interesting because the price of oil has not. It did go up. It did go up in the initial invasion of Ukraine to over $100 a barrel, but it's gone back down to just a little over $90 a barrel, which is where it's been for a while. So it's back down to kind of what would be normal for the last few months. But that doesn't mean that oil prices aren't going to go up, because there's just a lot of manipulation right now. That I think the world, at least the world leaders, with this net zero carbon, they want us to get off oil, and so they're going to do everything they can to reduce our dependency, or to reduce the amount of oil, not dependency, but to reduce the amount of oil that's just out there, and cause gas prices to skyrocket. The left has said that for years, that they desire that. They want gas to go up, because then people wouldn't be buying it as much. So the possibility of seeing $4, $5, $6, $7 a gallon over the next couple of months, I think it is a real possibility. So having a supply, and then not just the price, but we could see shortages possibly, probably manipulated, but we could certainly see lines and shortages of fuel. So I would look at that. Other things that I mention all the time is medicines. The vast majority of our medicines, well, pretty much all of our medicine comes from between China and India. And a lot of it comes from China. So make sure you're stocked up on that kind of stuff. Just your normal cooking things like oils. A lot of oils come from between Russia and Ukraine. There's a lot of cooking oil that comes from that area. Not all, but quite a bit. So that's something to consider stocking up on. Coconut oil has about the longest shelf life of your oils because oils don't have a typically real long shelf life. They go rancid. Cooking oil has about the longest. I would definitely be looking at your communications, not because they're under any kind of threat right now, but make sure you have your radios, ham radios, or FRS radios, CB radios. You need to have, and it doesn't hurt to have a little bit of all. People always asking what to get. Well, get what you can afford right now, but just keep getting. It doesn't hurt to have it. Of course, I prefer ham radio. I'm a ham radio operator, have been for almost 2 decades now. But definitely have forms of communication. A lot of these components, either the entire radios or components, are imported. And as things get crazier and crazier on the global level, it's very possible that some of those components could become hard to get. We're already seeing microchip shortages, and that could, is definitely in the long term going to affect ham radios or any type of communication radios. So certainly get that kind of stuff. If there was ever an EMP, nuclear attack, a cyber attack on our grid causing the grid to go down or communications networks to go down, things like ham radios are going to be working. As long as you protect them from like an EMP, they're going to work when the grid goes down. They're going to work when the communications networks goes down. So certainly have those items lined up. It's great to have a license, but if you don't have a license, at least have one and know how to use it. Because regardless of what people say, in an emergency situation, life-threatening, you can use it. And if the whole system kind of collapses down and we're in kind of a rule without law, it doesn't really matter at that point anyways. So certainly have all that kind of stuff, but be thinking about this. I don't want people to panic. I don't want people to lose their minds and think, Red Dawn's happening, World War III is upon us. I think that there's a very strong likelihood, because of how things are playing out in Europe, that we could see more stuff going on. We could see NATO involved. Everything, as the longer that this gets drawn out, the higher the probability of an accident happening, or someone feeling cornered and that they have to do something extreme to save face, or whatever it is. And so I think the longer this gets drawn out, the higher and higher likelihood we could see World War III. And even if we don't see it right now, I think the things that are taking place right now over there are probably what's going to lead us to World War III. If it not today, maybe weeks, months, or even a couple of years down the road. So folks, I would take this serious. Don't live in fear and panic, but certainly be serious and do the things and take the steps you can right now to get yourselves ready, because I think that we're past that point of being at the point of change. We're into that point of change. We're into that new era, that new phase and everything that we've been living in for the last couple of years. So certainly get your self ready, folks, and be watching for my next video later today, because I'll be talking about a nationwide vaccine passport system that is being implemented behind the scenes as we speak. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.